I installed a Ford Coyote 5-liter engine into my Ferrari F355 from salvage auction, and it required some minor cutting. Then we bolted on a beautiful VMP Gen3R supercharger, which required additional modification. Now I've got a CSF heat exchanger to install, a radium fuel cell to secure, and an absolutely wild exhaust to build, which, you guessed it, is going to require more cutting. Everyone seems to think that these Ferraris are just, perfect pieces of art from the factory, and I feel the need to point out the lack of symmetry that we've noticed in several locations. The idea here is to maintain as much structural rigidity as possible, but we're trying to move this connection point further forward to make space for our collector. This takes up a lot of real estate at the back of the car, and moving that forward just by a couple of inches is going to make the fab work on the exhaust that much easier. All the space in the world now. A large open space in the middle for our exhaust collector, and then we're just going to have to go back and triangulate everything. We're also going to do an additional bar that's going to run from the front section up. That front one there we might modify. We had left that one, but this Ferrari tubing is definitely not in the best shape. It's a little bit thinner than we were like, and it's obviously very old. So we're going to wait on some new tubing to get here before we lock down all of our dimensions. But we know that the tie-in points are going to be outside of those two black lines that straddle our center mark, which means that we can start the fabrication on this header. So here is the basic idea. This 8-into-1 collector is gonna be the center point of the exhaust directly behind the beautiful VMP blower. The headers are gonna have just all sorts of wild piping up here, and then the bottom section is going to come out the back of the car in this type of orientation. But we have just a bunch of transitions from the 4-inch out into the 3-inch, some resonators there. This is our temporary mounting solution. That way this is kind of locked down as best as possible, and just going to start laying out some pipe.
Laying down some pipe, huh?
I love it. I don't know how we're going to make it all work, but I absolutely love it, which means we have to make it all work. Tim and I have been grinding away on this Ferrari project, and most of the time it feels like there just aren't enough hours in the day, which makes taking a break for virtually anything extremely difficult. With Factor, at least our meals are made easy. Eat stress-free with Factor's delicious, ready-to-eat meals. Every fresh, never-frozen meal is chef-crafted, dietitian-approved, and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Factor takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success. Skip the grocery stores and prep work. Skip the overpriced takeout trap. Factor is more convenient, less expensive, and way more delicious. The convenience of only having to stop and eat for a minute on a project like this is truly unmatched. It heats up quick, it tastes delicious, and the cleanup cleanup, it couldn't be simpler. Head to factor75.com or click the link down in the description below. Use code 50DOLT to save 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box order. That's 50DOLT at factor75.com, 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box order. You ready to get back to work?
Nope. Hope that firing order's right.
This is where the real hard work begins. We have to figure out how to get from our header flanges over to all of those pipes there. We already cut the middle of the header flange out. That way we have two separate pieces. It'll make the disassembly process that much easier. The only idea that we have actually involves a stock header for us to use as inspiration. Almost like you've done that before.
No.
These two pipes right here is exactly what we were laying out on the other side. On the other side, we have the oil pump right here, so we knew that this one needed to get up and out of the way first, and we kind of were putting together that them being high was going to be the best route possible, but seeing it here, those front two are virtually perfect. These rear two are going to have to change, but we're going to need a lot of length out of them in order to get this as close to equal length as possible. So this is a curveball because that just saved us a ton of work if we cut the other one the same and just build off of that.
That was my genius idea.
Primary number one is tacked in place, and this is the longest runner that we're going to have, so we're going to use this to match the length for all the other ones. We started on the passenger side over here because we have our temporary strut support in place. This is going to get a weld-on version a little bit later on, but we have plenty of clearance the way we have everything laid out. Now we can begin to work on the other primaries and basically just keep working our way backwards and matching our runner length to this original longest runner.
Nope. Needs to be shorter.
So almost 50 inches exactly is what we think our longest primary runner is. The official way to do this was probably with volume. We were just kind of taking a combination of different measurements so we weren't on the long side or the short side the whole time. But I think 50 is going to be the number we're shooting for all of our runner lengths. So what appears to be our longer tube on the lower section, which is going to be the runners for the back of the engine, is roughly 21.5 inches, which means we need to make up like 30 inches of length in that area down there. Luckily, I think we have a solution for this, and this is a term that I just learned. It's called nesting pairs. So when you have tubes that are the exact same size diameter, but different centerline radius, there's an equation that you can use to figure out your two sizes so one will fit inside the other. Vibrant's website makes this very easy. The same size tube, which ours is 1 3/4 inches, your difference in the centerline radius is the tube size. So here we have a 1 3/4 inner centerline radius tube, and the outer one is 3.5. Makes your equation extremely, extremely easy. Now where it gets a little bit more interesting is when you change the axis that those two pipes sit onto. And what that's going to allow us to do is do a much tighter centerline radius on this big outside one. Voila! After Tim worked his magic on the welder, this is our nested pair that is going to rest down on the lower section near the frame. A much tighter outer centerline radius. This is still the 1.75 on the inside. This is a 2.65 here, which gives us a nice, tight, compact little bundle. A little more cutting and a little more welding, and we have a completed header for the passenger side of our engine. All of our clearances look absolutely great, which is going to allow us ample space for heat expansion. Now that we have this template, Tim's going to go ahead and work on replicating this for the other side of the engine, while I'm going to go ahead and move up front where I've got some additional cutting to do. The hood and the front bumper are already off, and what we're going to be focused on right now is what is in this box. This is a universal heat exchanger from CSF, model number 8030. These are literally the perfect size for pretty much every project here at the shop. Lee runs one of these on his twin turbo Corvette. I actually stacked 2 of these for the cooling system on the Viper Swap 240, and this is going to be the perfect size to fill up the front bumper opening on the Ferrari. That's right, we're doing a front mounted heat exchanger on the Ferrari. This is an idea I've been completely obsessed with on this build because I don't know that I've ever seen a Ferrari with a front mount intercooler or heat exchanger. And this front bumper illustrates that. It is ridiculously thick, high-strength fiberglass, and that's because on this Ferrari, it doesn't have air that passes through the front bumper into a radiator like a lot of other cars. This has a big kind of high-pressure area right here that then creates an avenue aerodynamically to force air into the brake ducts that go to the front brakes on this car. Now, part of the reason why I want to do a front mount heat exchanger on this car is the same reason that a lot of the aftermarket twin turbo kits for Lamborghinis and R8 have front mounted heat exchangers. It puts so much volume into the system that it allows the heat dissipation to be as much as possible. Here goes nothing. After just a minor amount of additional cutting and things going exactly to plan, we have what resembles a finished product. This went far worse than I was originally anticipating, and I had to cut a massive amount more of the bumper. We really only had one minor casualty where a Sawzall got away from me, but this car, the exterior is far from good, so we're going to have plenty of touch-ups down the road. The look is absolutely awesome, but the truth is we're only halfway there. With the last bit of cutting and welding, we can finally mount our heat exchanger on the car. I made some very crude, most likely temporary brackets to secure it, and Tim went ahead and welded the fittings directly onto the heat exchanger itself. We knew that we wanted to 180 them and that they were ultimately going to pass into these bulkheads into the trunk compartment, but because we're space limited, we had to get these as tight as possible, and having an adapter and then the full 180 fitting on top of it was just a little bit too much. Now, there is a plan to get all that air that we just forced into the trunk compartment out through the hood, but that is going to have to wait for another video. Right now, I just want to get all of these lines routed, and then we can get the bumper back on the car. We're using dash 12 push lock fitting, which correlates to 3/4 inch push lock hose. This race flux push lock hose is rated to 150 PSI, although our heat exchanger system is not going to have any pressure in it whatsoever. So as long as we keep this routed nicely out of the way where it's not going to rub through any holes, I think we'll be good to go. Here we have it, our finished product, and this is exactly what I was envisioning. Before you guys go roasting me in the comments about this thing not being centered, the heat exchanger is where it's supposed to be. The grill from Ferrari is not exactly centered. We've got our radium fuel cell installed, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this in the next video, but we needed this in place for the dimensions for our duct that is ultimately going to feed that air from the hot heat exchanger out of the hood, but unfortunately, I'm just not ready to make this cut yet. The team at VMP Performance invited me to come down for their open house, and considering there's snow on the ground here in Maryland and it's 75 and sunny in Florida, it's pretty much a no-brainer. But for that reason, we're pretty much out of time to work on the Ferrari for right now. I want to save this hood cut for when I'm not kind of under pressure, and that way we can get it exactly right. But for right now, we just need to check on Tim, make sure that he's buttoning things up at the back of the car, and then we can get this thing in the trailer and get on our way. Tim's been tying up all the loose ends, including welding and painting the frame sections. We got our tube in, and it is a little bit smaller diameter, but you can see much thicker, just much stronger tubing for what we're looking to do. But I do understand why Ferrari used some thin stuff. They were just trying to keep the weight down on it. And then also he wrapped up the exhaust section. This lower section with the muffler just came out absolutely ridiculous. A lot of tight radius stuff, which just incorporated a lot of pie cuts, and it came out looking absolutely wild. Such a shame that it's going to be such a long time before we're able to hear it, but at least it will look the part. With the spring clamps installed, I think we can finally say that this exhaust is finished, and the end result is basically exactly what I was envisioning in my head. For a bunch of amateur exhaust builders, I think that this came out pretty darn good. We're putting this thing directly into the trailer. If you're in the Daytona Beach area, I hope that I can see some of you out at the VMP Performance open house. Otherwise, I'll see you back at the shop here in a few weeks with the Sawzall in my hand.
Is that bad?
It's so bad, it's not even funny.
It hurts.
Whatever he doesn't like, he's like the real modest builder. Like he likes to do things OEM plus. No, we're gonna do something rowdy on this, right?
The pipe size minus your... No, that up.
I didn't realize you were doing that.
I'm getting you stealing my factor here.
The minute the ad read's done, I'm coming to take these things.
No, that's stupid.
Okay.
I'm sorry, dog. That's dumb. Yeah,
Make sure that's Ferrari quality, Tim, okay?
Only the finest.
We're just kind of taking a combination. Wow.
That's a good one. Is that part of your multilingual thing?
Combination.
I'm sorry.
Dog, your idea
Next
reminds
setup.
me of those like Mario levels where you go down the pipe and then up and up. Yeah, that's yeah.
Interessante.
I didn't dip it. I hit it with it. Know what I mean?
I'll solve this problem for you in 2 seconds, all right? Okay. You need to fill this space. You need to fill that space. 1 turbo, 2 turbo. Done deal.
Compound boost.
Lower
Compound
end
boost.
turbo. Yeah, exactly.
That would be kind of wild.
So, would you call that a K member?
No. Call it stupid is what I'd call it.
It's not a K member.
Turbos it is. Sold!